I'm Austin Cooper. I've worked in the provost office for about a year now, and my colleague Bev has me beat by about 25 years. She's been in the provost office, been my mentor really over the last year. Every time we've talked about professional leave together, she said that it's really one of her favorite things to be a part of over the entirety of her career here. And I see why after last year. Being able to see some of these applications and see what you're all interested in, it's really an inspiration to me, and just the diversity of it all is really fascinating. And so I enjoy this as well.
I'm Eric Deshane. I'm in the biology department, and this is my first year on this committee. And that's because I just had my first sabbatical a couple of years ago, and just to put out a carrot for you guys, which I'm sure you're already aware of, it was an amazing experience to be able to have that sabbatical opportunity and go abroad and work in another lab. It was very productive research-wise, and I came back, it did just exactly what it was supposed to do. It came back totally renewed, extremely motivated, and so I would really hope that you all have that same opportunity.
I'm Tracy Koski, and I'm literacy faculty in the Woodring College of Education. And like Eric, I'm just finishing my first year on the committee, and my favorite part, of course, was reading everyone's applications, because it is really so fascinating to see the wide diversity of scholarly work that people do on this campus.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Sathan. I'm in the art department, and I'm finishing up my third year on the committee, so this was my last year. And I've loved serving on this committee for the very same reasons, to see all the amazing research that's being done on this campus. I did professional leave in 2010, 2011 in Japan, spent the year there doing research, getting to know my colleagues over there better. I study Japanese art history. Anyway, I've really enjoyed this committee, and I know how much fun they'll have next year reading your applications.
We don't have an unlimited number of quarters that we can grant for professional leave. We're actually limited by state law and regulation that we can only grant a certain number based on how many faculty members we have at the university. So that number really has not grown a lot over the years, with the exception of last year. We were able to grant 91 quarters, which was more than we had been able to grant previously, because we had a lot of new hires come to the university after the hiring freeze during the recession. Now, the applicant can really start their application at any time. Our application is available on our website, our professional leaves website, which you access through the provost's webpage. Once this application is actually complete, you will send it to your department chair. They'll review the applications. They'll fill out Appendix 9, which is actually a section on the application, which is where they put their input. After the chair is finished reviewing the applications, they send them on to the dean's office. The dean's office will upload your application to a P drive, which is a shared network drive that this committee, as well as the provost, uses to access all the applications. And so there's no need to ever print out your application. It's digital. So it saves on paper, it saves on time. We used to have to walk paper applications and binders everywhere. So this is a great opportunity to save on resources, save on time by just saving these applications digitally. The provost will then, after they receive the names from the deans, the names of everyone applying and for how many quarters they've applied, the provost will again make sure that people are eligible for the quarters that they requested, and usually they are. Once the provost clears everyone and says, okay, they're eligible for the quarters they've requested and their application is complete, that's when the University Professional Leave Committee, over their winter break, goes through every application, carefully really reading it and judging each application on the merits. After winter break, they all come together and basically talk about each application, see where there's consensus about which ones are relatively more meritorious than the other ones. They send their final recommendations to the provost, who then usually adopts their recommendations and notifies the candidates, the college, their college, and their department of the final decision by January 31, which is the date specified in the CBA. And the process doesn't end there. If you're granted leave, the applicant has two more responsibilities. One is to fill out a professional leave for payment agreement. They also are required to provide a written report to their chair, to the dean, and to the provost within 1 quarter of completion of the leave that they were granted. So those are the two remaining responsibilities, and that basically is the end of the process, and then we start all over again for the next year. If you'll just turn the page, the next handout I gave you, this will be quicker. This is our website, a snapshot of the professional leave website. The URL is very straightforward. It's www.edu/provost. I told you it was on the provost website. Then it was /faculty/leave. That's how you get to this website. It has everything you need. It has your professional leave application form. So if you, again, want to open this during the summer, start working on it, this is where you'll go. It has the repayment agreement. It has deadlines. It has application instructions, technical tips and tricks. It's basically a one-stop shop for everything you need regarding professional leave. The third handout is Section 10 of the collective bargaining agreement. As you all know, collective bargaining agreement is being renegotiated right now. We will, of course, keep the website up to date. We don't expect any huge changes with professional leave, by no means, but we will keep the website updated with the most current collective bargaining agreement whenever we get it. But I always encourage faculty members to read this. I'm a nerd, but I actually like reading the collective bargaining agreement. It's just something I find enjoyable. Finally, the fourth thing I handed out today, I told you didn't have to print out the professional leave application, but I printed it out anyway, just to give you some idea of what we're asking for on it. If you turn the page, you can see Appendix 9 is in blue. That's, again, where your chair will provide his or her input on your application. Okay, and then the final handout, before we get to our committee members and let them talk. This final handout is somewhat sobering statistics when it comes to professional leave. Now, in recent years, a lot more people have been applying for a lot more quarters, and really the number of quarters that we're legally able to grant has increased, but not at the same rate. You can see here that leave requests, the very first row, faculty requests last year, 59 faculty members requested leave. We were able to grant leave to 53 of them. Quarters granted, the last two rows. Quarters requested this year were 116, quarters granted were 91. So we did grant everything we were able to grant. Really, you have to go back far to find a time when we didn't grant everything we were allowed to grant. So when we allowed to grant 91, we do. But that's not 116. So again, you see the competitive nature of this process. It's really important that today that you ask questions, of our committee members, and that you incorporate their recommendations into your application. They can't do any harm, can only do good, especially in light of these statistics. And we'll just start with Julia, since she's the senior member, the ranking member.
There are a lot of details, of course, to keep in mind, but I think Austin has made it a lot easier with this flow chart. And if I were you, I would keep this by your computer and just keep track of the deadlines and get working on it as soon as possible. Something that I think is really important is remembering who you're writing for. Mm-hmm. And you're writing for a broad variety of people working in different fields. So keep the jargon out of the application. Just explain your work as you would to a colleague outside of your field. And just keep that in mind, that you want it to be very clear to someone outside of your field. And those are wonderful to be able to read. For me to be able to read an application, for example, from mathematics that I can understand gives me a real feeling of confidence in that colleague and in the work that's going to be done, that I have an idea of what's actually going to take place in the research. Something else I would keep in mind is that that combination, I think we probably all tell our students this, that we want the overarching view. We want the broad picture of the faculty members' research, but also the faculty members' research within the field. But along with that, we want the details. We want to know how these goals are going to be achieved and explained in a clear, concise, professional but non-jargony language. So that combination of overarching view and specific details, that's something that I think I have struggled with in reading applications when there aren't enough details for me to really get the sense that the faculty member has fleshed out exactly how she or he is going to approach that research project. So I think that's very important. Something else, something I noticed last year that was particularly impressive to me from one of the science applications was I got the feeling that the faculty member was anticipating the kinds of questions that committee members might have. So, for example, in the sciences, I think you often have NSF funding, and
Not often, but it's sought.
Oh, not often, okay. It's a lot more often than it is in the art fields.
Yeah.
And so for those of us who know that maybe there is funding coming in from the federal government, well, how does that balance with the salary, with the sabbatical leave, the money you'd be receiving for your leave? So anticipating the kinds of questions people might have, this one applicant actually included that in the application, exactly what terms were covered by the NSF funding, and I had exactly had that question, and I was so delighted to see it all laid out. And that, again, really gave me confidence that that person knew exactly what the parameters were for the research and how it was going to be conducted. I would also say, and this might be in part because I'm also currently chair of the art department, and we've talked in our department about the chair writing the letter. And while I think it's true, the most important part of the application is the applicant's writing and explanation of the project, I think it's very important to be in contact with your chair. If the chair is willing to read an early draft of the application, if you can get feedback, because remember, the chair is going to be writing for you. And some of the chairs are, when there's a very effective letter from a chair, it's very helpful to the committee to not only have an excellent application, but have the chair clearly understanding the work that's being done, because typically the chair is someone who's at least in a closely related field. So that gives us yet another perspective, and if that letter is very articulate as well, it really helps. So I would be in touch with your chair and realize maybe over the summer, if you're already working on it, if you can get a draft, if the chair is willing to look at a draft and give you some feedback in advance, I would really strongly recommend that. I think those are the things that really stand out for me. I will let my colleagues here take over.
I'll just say a couple of things that build off of what you said. Something people have actually asked me as I'm walking around. People have said, "Oh, I can't go on leave because my department needs me to teach these courses, or because there's 5 people from my department who are all applying, so I shouldn't apply." But so I think it's important for everyone to recognize that it's your right as a faculty member to have professional leave. And so if you are getting the message in some way that you should not go, that's not necessarily a correct message. Is that right? So communicating with your department member, but having said that, that's another reason to communicate with your department member chair early so that they can plan in advance if in the case that you are offered professional leave, that they'll be prepared for that.
And if I could just, if you don't mind, Tracy,
No.
if I could gloss one thing you said, I wouldn't approach your application with an introductory paragraph saying, you know, I demand the right to go on leave.
No.
Because it is a competitive process. Remember that you do have that right, but you do have to compete.
That's right.
To be able to go on leave. So just let your research shine through. Let that research project be the focus rather than I deserve to go on leave. I've been here for 25 years. I must go on leave. I'm tired. That's not going to fly.
That's
Just word of warning.
The other thing that I would say is that, you know, Julie was talking about balancing the big picture with details, and really all of the details become important for me. One of the things that I often was spending a lot of time on in the application was the timeline, trying to understand how the applicant, what the applicant thought they could accomplish in a 10-week quarter, or what they, or what they saw that if they needed 3 quarters, why they really thought they needed those 3 quarters. So that detail about what they were going to be spending their time on during that 3rd quarter or 2nd quarter was important. So all the parts really do get looked at, and so my recommendation is to not let that be just a throwaway piece of it. It's important.
All right, so as is noted, it's a competitive process, and so in my opinion, your goal is to sell yourself, and you're selling yourself to a very diverse audience. We got Fairhaven, biology, elementary education, and art here right now, and that's going to turn over, right? So as has been stated, you want to make sure that your project is presented in a way that makes sense to everybody, and that you leave no questions unanswered. You don't want to leave any questions in our head, like, what is this person really doing, or do they really need that time? Why are they going there? These are questions that come up. And so if your plan is to write a book, you know, give us an idea of what that book's going to be about, as detailed as you can. Do you have chapters? Is there a table of contents? All right, where is this book going, and why is it important? If you're giving an art show in Japan, you know, why is that important for your professional development? How does that affect you and your ability to return to the university and do your job better than before? You know, if you're interested in studying fish on some coral reef, let us know why that matters and how much those things are going to cost, and do you have external or internal funding to be able to accomplish the goals of that. And as was stated, you know, put it in terms that we can all understand. If you're coming from the math department or the art department or the sciences or whatever, there's specific jargon that you use daily, but I'm not going to understand. And so just put it in, recognize your audience, sell yourself to this broad audience, because we all will discuss this and we'll be able to clarify some things from our own personal vantage, but it really benefits you to not need to have anything at all clarified. If your application is laid out really well, you have a specific timeline, you've justified everything in there, and you've shown why this is valuable for your own personal development, your professional development, and the return to Western, then you'll do much better than otherwise.
Morning. The thing I want to stress is I think the rudest shock for me in this process has been the importance of the timeline. I've been on this committee for 6 years. I'm stepping off after today. Right, 3 years, sorry, 3 years.
It felt like 6 years.
No, it's a 3-year thing. It's a 3-year game. But it's the timeline. It's very interesting because we see applications in the humanities and the social sciences where somebody has, a beautiful research plan, is very clearly explaining their field, and just because it's maybe not conventional, they don't have a budget of how they're going to use the time. Whereas maybe it's just because of the rounds of applying for funds, it's often the case that people from the sciences will provide, budget their time and are at least able to communicate a budget of their time very well in their applications. And it's not like, it's not like all the scientists get it and none of the humanists get it, but that timeline was something I certainly didn't put in my application when I went for sabbatical, and I was, wondering at the time why I got 2 quarters instead of 3. And, so it's interesting. It's a sort of a double-edged sword, because in a good year, if you have a timeline and you want 3 quarters, and it's really clear what you can do with 3 quarters, and the ratio, that helps you. In a bad year, the committee can see there's so many applicants, and your project could be broken up, so have 2. So you do expose yourself, but my experience of being on this committee for 3 years is that they take timeline very, very seriously, and that can be what makes a difference. And that was new to me, and I was a bit like a lemming. I relearn it every year, and I relearned it this year as well.
So I think we can open it up for questions if any of you brought any questions today. Committee members, if we can just restate the question for the purpose of the video, they can hear us as mics. For people watching along online, that'd be great. But yeah, do you have any questions?
Jump in.
Let's start here.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No. So much play. My name is Garth Anson. I'm from the art department, and my question is always, I'm very curious about a letter of invitation and how much weight or bearing that has on an application, because there have been, I can foresee having an invitation sewn up by October or have something pending. How much weight does that have to the committee?
So how much weight does a letter of application or a letter of invitation have to the committee when they're evaluating applications?
That's important. Any sign that you have a letter of invitation, you've been in contact with your, for example, when I was going to Japan, I had been in contact with scholars there. I was going to be associated with the university. I had been invited to come to that university, and they were going to support my visa application and so forth. I had all of those letters, and I had to translate all of those letters from Japanese to make sure that the committee could read them. So absolutely important. Letter of invitation, or I think, Neil, did you mention a book? Or a book, if you have a book proposal, if you have a book contract, of course, please put that in. Any sort of outside evidence that your project is being supported. You might also have letters of support of people in your field who know about the research you're doing and find it to be very important. Those are also critical.
And if you're planning to travel to do some work at a specialized library, or you're going to need specialized access in some way, some kind of letter indicating that you will get that access is important.
Yeah, I think it just shows an upfront commitment on your part to try to get all the pieces together. But again, it goes back to leaving we shouldn't have any questions, right? We want to see that you've stacked the deck in your favor, right?
And if you're applying for residencies, in the case of an artist, even if you haven't heard back from all of those residencies, list them. Or if you're in contact with certain universities and maybe you haven't completely worked out the details, having those letters of invitation and then also having those possibilities shows that you're leaving no stone unturned, that you're trying your very best to make the best use of that time.
So we'll go here and then there.
Is it possible to, how do you provide feedback to people? Is there a feedback mechanism?
We
from the
do
committee?
actually, in the letter that goes out to the people who either had received a reduced number of quarters or were denied a leave, we explain. There's usually a few sentences, and we get that information both from the college, the dean's comments, and also from here. And it's meant to encourage, for the future, this is the area that needs to be addressed, kind of thing. Those are the sorts of comments that, the timeline was unclear or whatever it is, so. Yeah.
So there are specifics in the letter?
Each one is
And you
different.
can follow up with committee members?
And yes, yeah.
Is there an appeal process?
No,
There isn't.
no. And it states that in the
Yeah.
professional.
I mean, I think that is a valuable question, and it does kind of reiterate the fact that it's a qualitative judgment on the part of the committee. I mean, eventually it gets
Eventually.
down to.
And each year is different.
Right.
Each year you're competing against a different group of applications, a different number, and so what happened last year, the year before is different from year to year.
So I'm in the Department of Secondary Education, and my research feels like it's kind of growing like a little bit out of that area. I'm really interested in organizational change and systems change, and I'm curious, which I feel like is really advantageous in my work institutionally, but might feel disconnected somewhat from what I do in my department, and I wonder how important that is. You all need to see that my work lived in secondary education.
I would respond to that just in this.
My location is in the libraries, but I have a doctorate in cultural studies and artistic choice at Fairhaven, so my proposal is also not going to fit into a narrow kind of
Could you just
definition.
explain it?
Yeah, and I would say that, the professional leave, in my personal opinion, is an opportunity to go sort of out of your box and develop yourself professionally, maybe following a line that you've been pursuing, or perhaps attacking a new line and gaining some new skills. And when I was recently on professional leave, that's what I did, is I kind of stepped out of my box, not as far as that perhaps, but to gain some new skills that I could then bring back to Western and apply here. And so I think in that sense, it would be looked upon very favorably, but at the same time, you would have to explicitly defend that you can do this, and that this is, you're not just completely jumping off into space. Yeah, and draw those lines very clearly. This is how this is connected to what I'm doing. I have the capacity to do this. I've got these letters of support suggesting that I'm gonna be able to lean on the resources that I need. And this, in the end, is how I'm going to develop and return to Western and apply these new skills or research program or whatever.
So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We do unfortunately have to clear the room in a few minutes, but if the committee members, if any of them can stay for a few minutes, maybe outside, if there are any other remaining questions you want to ask, feel free. Also feel free to contact Bev or I. We're always available in the provost office. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.